All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome into another Mock Draft Monday. This is Fourth and Inches. I'm your host, Tyler, and we are going to dive right in. Now, obviously, the headline gave it away a little bit. We got New England trading back, changing it up a little bit today. I think this is very much in the realm of possibilities. You're going to want to stick around to see what happens there. And as always, like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content I have coming out. We are going to keep these videos going all the way up until the NFL draft in just a few weeks. Today, this will be recorded on Monday, April the 8th, and I will also be mixing in some additional mocks throughout, perhaps some 2 rounds as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and kick things off here and start this NFL mock draft. So, not going to be spending a lot of time today on picks 1 and 2. I will quickly go over them. I will be spending a little bit more time on Chicago's pick at number 9. A bit more to talk about there, but pretty straightforward for the first 2 picks. It seems like a for sure lock at this point. I don't think there's any hesitation from anyone. Caleb Williams will be going number 1 overall to the Chicago Bears. And just to quickly touch on it, if you missed my previous videos, Caleb Williams is going into, in most recent years, the most ideal situation that a number 1 pick can go to, right? If you think historically, number 1 picks have the number 1 teams with the number 1 pick have the number 1 pick because they are quite terrible. And they usually have horrendous offensive lines, new coaching regimes, change of scheme. It's usually a hot mess express. This, however, is ideal. He is going into a pretty good offensive line where they drafted Darnell Wright at left tackle in the first round last year. The team is getting much better. They had some offensive signings this year as well. DeAndre Swift comes in, another asset at running back, very talented pass catcher. They bring in, obviously, Keenan Allen for a 4th-round pick from the Chargers. They have DJ Moore as their wide receiver 1, and then a very capable tight end in Cole Kmet. So very ideal situation for Caleb Williams to step into, and if there is a reason for him to succeed, this is it. Very, very tough division, though, with honestly Minnesota probably still being a team that can exceed most people's expectations because they're so well coached. And a very, very good Detroit Lions and Green Bay Packers. So still a challenging situation for Caleb Williams and the Bears, but for sure lock at number 1. Moving on to pick number 2. This is going to be Drake May here. Not going to spend a lot of time on it or overthink it. I think for a variety of reasons, he's going to be the guy to go here at 2. I'm seeing there's just great comps. Sure, there's a few things that are not polished, but those can be fixed with good coaching. You know, we could work on a couple of the accuracy things. If you remember, Josh Allen struggled his rookie year with accuracy too, and he got better. He got a lot better. Drake May is a very Andrew Luck 2.0, and with this situation in Washington, new coaching regime, I think he could succeed there, and he is being locked in at pick number 2. Moving on to the New England Patriots. Teased this just a minute ago. The New England Patriots are going to be trading out of pick 3 in today's mock draft. Okay? Now, before you leave, before you jump to another video because you think I'm crazy, listen to this. Here's why. Let's take all the rookie quarterbacks in this class for just a second. Caleb Williams, Drake May included, Jayden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., whatever. Okay? Now, in most mocks, we're assuming New England is only getting, at best, Jayden Daniels or Drake May, but let's just say for a second they could even get Caleb Williams. The best quarterback in this draft, Caleb Williams, and all the rest compared. Regardless, though, Caleb Williams even, I don't think, could go to the New England Patriots this year and succeed. They have a mediocre offensive line. They lack crucial weapons. They have huge gaps at the skill player positions. Ramondre Stevenson is probably their best player on offense, right? New coaching regime. Drod Mayo, defensive mind, new GM. One of the worst pass rushes in the NFL last year. Huge holes on defense. Like, this team needs a lot more than what the number 3 pick will fix. New England is also a franchise that historically has always traded back. Now, was that a lot in the Bill Belichick GM regime? Yes, it was. But it makes a ton of sense here. You know, whatever quarterback they bring in will have no weapons and a mediocre offensive line. Like, they need more assets. And if we quickly look at the New England Patriots, they have pick 3, pick 34, which is going to be a great pick 68, and essentially all their standard picks all the way until they get into, day 3 picks where they have Jacksonville's 193 and Chicago's 231, which at that point, you're gambling, right? You're rolling the dice. So in today's mock draft, we have them trading back because they know that they are going to need a lot more than what a number 3 pick can solve to piece together a team that can compete in a division that is very good, in a division where they are currently the worst by far. And I don't think Jayden Daniels can fix that. So for those reasons, they are going to be trading back. Now, it is not to the Minnesota Vikings. It is to, if I can find him here, it is to the Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders are obviously going to have to give up 13. They're going to have to give up their first round in 2025. Now, PFF mock draft here doesn't let you simulate any 2026 picks, but I think that's in the realm of possibilities as well. It could be a 2026 third. Maybe there's an additional, like a second, something like that thrown in. There could be some pick swaps on top of that. I doubt any players will make their way into this trade, but for the sake of making it work in this simulator system, we'll throw something in there like that. And, maybe some swaps here. Something like that. We will go ahead and force this through. And New England will move back, pick up some extra picks, and yeah, it'd have to be for this year. And try to rebuild this team with more assets. Okay, so then we have the Las Vegas Raiders on the clock, and they are going to take their quarterback of the future here in Jayden Daniels. So I could see it. I could definitely see Jayden Daniels as a Raider. Obviously, the only real concerns are, late breakout age. Obviously, was way less productive at his time at Arizona, but had a phenomenal season with LSU this last year, and really shined. I mean, very few interceptions, insane touchdown rate, huge rushing touchdown upside as well, elite rusher, and this could be a situation where the Raiders are able to compete a bit more in the AFC West. So, a move like that, could that propel them ahead of where the Denver Broncos might be? Yeah, it could. It could. I think the Chargers got some upside going for them, and then obviously Kansas City's, a 3-time world champion, right? So don't hate it. He has some weapons. Obviously, Jacoby Myers, Devontae Adams should stay there, and Michael Mayer, their new rookie tight end they brought in last year, showing some promise. Running back is a need for this team as well, though, but they might be able to address that in the later rounds. But unfortunately, they just gave up some capital to come and get him. Moving on to pick 4, the Arizona Cardinals. Now, a lot of people have them moving back. A lot of people have them trading out of 4 in their mocks. I've had it in some of my mocks. But if we quickly look at the Cardinals, they have pick 4. They have pick 4. They have pick 27 in the first round as well, which they got from Houston via the Will Anderson deal last year, where they moved up to get him at 3, maybe 4. They have pick 35 in the third round. They have picks 66 and 71 in the fourth round. They have pick 90 and 104 in the fourth round, and then they have 138, 162 in the fifth, and then 2 7th-round picks as well. So they have a lot of picks. They have, 8, 10, they have 11 picks. Probably one of the teams with the most amount of picks this year. So does trading out of 4, is it absolutely necessary, or should you go ahead and take an elite option at a position that you really, really need? They have 11 picks this year. I don't see them wanting to move out of 4 to accumulate more. And especially with a very wide receiver needy team after them, I think they're going to go ahead and just lock in a generational prospect here in Marvin Harrison Jr. So obviously MHJ coming out of Ohio State, Biletnikoff winner 2 years ago, and just a phenomenal talent. Has no weaknesses, very mature, soft, like composed, soft-spoken. Obviously comes from talent, you know, with the access that gets you to, with his father being Marvin Harrison. I mean, this is just something very, very much so to be excited about. Huge need for Arizona, obviously. Kyler Murray gets an elite weapon. Trey McBride was probably the number one option in this offense prior, and a developing, promising Michael Wilson will play opposite of him. They do still have some need for the kind of gadgety guys. They did deal Rondale Moore to the Atlanta Falcons, but Greg Dortch still on that team in the receiving option as well. Moving on to the Chargers at pick 5. Now, this is where we're going to have our second trade of this mock, and it is, as you said, probably out loud right now, the Minnesota Vikings. Why, though? Obviously, Minnesota has the resources. They need to move up. They need to get their quarterback of the future. That's what's going to happen here. But I want to talk about the Chargers side for just 1 second. The Chargers desperately need a receiver. Could they take one here? Yes. Do they have other needs? Yes, they do. Some of them are on the defensive side of the ball. We're also hearing a ton of dialogue around them improving that offensive line so they can run the ball, right? Greg Roman comes in as the offensive coordinator. They want to run. We saw obviously what Harbaugh did at Michigan. And this team was one of the worst rushing offenses in the NFL last year. Bottom 5 in grade. They definitely had a lot better pass protection, but they weren't playing smash mouth football, right? There was no culture to the team. It just didn't work. And Jim Harbaugh, I know, wants to change that. So a lot of people have Joe Alt mocked here to play right tackle. He could go opposite of Rashawn Slater, currently left tackle. And although that makes a ton of sense, I think trading back gives them a few more picks, a few more high-value picks potentially, where they can look to continue to rebuild this team and plug in additional things that they need. And so for those reasons, we are going to have them move back. Whereas if you look at Minnesota, a much more complete team on offense minus quarterback. Obviously lost Kirk Cousins. They couldn't pay the guy $40 million a year. They did sign Sam Darnold, and they paid him a decent amount of money. And Sam Darnold had a lot of teams interested in him, right? So he could have went to a lot of places and potentially guaranteed himself as a starter, but he chose Minnesota, and I think that was wise of him. Kevin O'Connell is a great head coach, an offensive-minded head coach, where Sam Darnold's also been getting refinement, and I'm sure he's grown and improved with his tenure in San Francisco, and he has a chance to compete and maybe be a day one starter in 2024, regardless of them drafting a quarterback. And I think that's a great, healthy situation. You could come draft J.J. McCarthy here, and he doesn't have to start day one. He can come in after year one, kind of like a Alex Smith, Pat Mahomes scenario, you know, Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers, if you will. There's a lot of logic to that. You don't force a rookie in. You know, there's time for them to develop and get better. And if Sam Darnold could win games there, great. Now, he's historically a very inaccurate quarterback, so we'll see what happens. He'd have to make some major improvements there, but great offensive line. Elite weapons on offense. TJ Hawkinson at tight end, one of the best at his position. Justin Jefferson at wide receiver, arguably the best at his position. Jordan Addison, arguably can make a case as him being one of the best number 2s for an offense. Second year out of USC, but former Biletnikoff winner as well. But they need to run the ball. The Chargers do. And they need more than just what Joe Alt or Malik Neighbors could bring them here. They need more than that. So they're going to stack some assets here and move back. Minnesota would be paying their 11, their 23 from this year. It could potentially be some other things. Like I said, I can't use 2026 picks here, but, you know, call it something like that. You know, maybe something like this. Okay. Something along those lines. Obviously, I'm working with limited options here. Minnesota is now on the clock at pick 5. They are obviously taking their quarterback of the future, and they have a situation where he doesn't have to play day one, like I said, and I think that's ideal. If he's the day one starter and they're ready and he's looking good and they're ready to compete right away, fine. J.J. McCarthy to the Minnesota Vikings at pick 5. Minnesota does have some real need at pass rush, so that is something they'll have to address in the later rounds, but in a very, very tough division with Chicago Bears now getting Caleb Williams, Detroit being as good as they are, obviously Jared Goff, and then the fantastic Green Bay Packers with their incredible youth and Jordan Love looking like he's going to be very good. Minnesota's kind of being forced to make a move like this. So, they're in a different division. Things look different. Maybe they don't have to force it quite so much and they can compete with Sam Darnold, right? Like an NFC South type of division. But they're going to have to make a move like this. Which brings us to the New York Giants at pick 6. And this is an interesting one for me because it could go a lot of ways. I think they're pigeonholed here. Maybe they believe in Daniel Jones. Maybe they don't. They got a lot of money tied up in him this year anyway. It's going to be crucial for Brian Dable that they perform this year, for job security. Obviously, he was coach of the year 2 years ago, but I'm not saying his job is at risk yet, but this year is going to be interesting. And so there's pressure, and I don't see a way that they're going to draft a QB or make something like that happen or move up and pay all that money to Daniel Jones to sit the bench. It's just not making a lot of sense. Now, a couple things we know for sure. There's 32 teams in the NFL. The New York Giants had the worst receiver room in the NFL in almost every area. They scored the worst in route running. They scored the worst in production against zone defense, which is very dominant in the NFL now. Percentage of separation, receivers just getting open. Whether they got targets or not is irrelevant. Just did they create any separation, any space, and just overall efficiency. They were the worst receiver group in the NFL. As a default, they were. Now you add in Daniel Jones and his horrible quarterback play and, how many receivers, did he throw balls to that just weren't catchable attempts, right? Inaccurate play, very sloppy from him, got sacked a ton. I mean, it was just horrendous here. And, oh, by the way, they lost Saquon Barkley. Not a great time to be a Giants fan. Apologize in advance if you are. I'm going to list off a couple teams here just to really make a point. These are the 4 of the bottom 5 teams in receiving unit last year. New York Jets, horrendous. Okay, obviously Garrett Wilson is extremely talented, but we know the quarterback play was also a big part of that. Outside of Garrett Wilson, though, wasn't great. Carolina Panthers. Adam Thielen wasn't it, guys. DJ Chark was not it, guys. Laviska Shenault, he's not there anymore, but Terrace Marshall Jr., not it, guys. Jonathan Mingo, not it, guys. Cleveland Browns. Okay, now that is with them bouncing back in the back half of the year. Obviously, that's a little bit Joe Flacco, Amari Cooper carried. Horrendous. And New England Patriots, second to last. Obviously, I just talked about them earlier. No skill players, no weapons. Devontae Parker is not the answer. Tyquan Thornton is not the answer. That team is horrendous at wide receiver currently, and they don't typically draft and develop wide receivers very well. N'Keal Harry, great example. That being said, the New York Giants were dead last behind those teams I just named. Their receiver core was worse than the Patriots, Browns, Panthers, and Jets, and it was by a pretty decent margin that they were in last. And for that reason, I don't see a way for them to not do this, and I don't think there's a lot of trade back options that make a ton of sense because they wouldn't want to trade super far back into this first round. They would be looking to move back a few spots if possible to gain some capital and then still get top skill players that they need. And I don't think they want to miss a shot at the big 3 being obviously MHJ's gone, but Odunze and Malik. So they are taking Malik Neighbors here. Would be the wide receiver 1 in most classes. It's just coincidence that Marvin Harrison Jr. is in this class. Moving on to the Tennessee Titans at pick 7. Couple things here really important to know. The Tennessee Titans were a bottom 8 team last year in pass blocking, so not particularly great. Obviously, rookie quarterback play doesn't help with Will Levis. They were middle of the pack in run blocking. Now, Derrick Henry probably supports that in some ways, but he's obviously not there anymore. So what has the Tennessee Titans done? Okay, first and foremost, they went out, signed a new center, a huge upgrade there. They got Lloyd Cushenberry, phenomenal center who's had his tenure in Denver. 4 years, $50 million. Now, they did release tackle Andre Dillard, and we know that they have Peter Skoronski, fantastic left guard that they drafted in the first round of last year's draft. And if you've seen any of my previous videos, you've heard me say this. Will Levis is Mount Rushmore bad at feeling blindside pressure. Okay, so he's a right-handed quarterback. That's obviously going to be his left-hand side, his blind side. He's decent at front-side pressure because you can see it coming. But he's going to have to work on that for him to succeed in the NFL and for this team to win any games next year. So they're going to need a lock at left tackle to protect this guy and shore up that left side of the line. And that is going to be Mr. Joe Alt, arguably one of the best, if not the best tackle in this class out of Notre Dame, and give the Tennessee Titans a shot of winning some games in what is now shaping up to be an even tougher division. They have DeAndre Hopkins there. They have Treylon Burks, their first-round pick from 2 years ago that hasn't quite turned into anything yet, out of Arkansas, I believe. And then they just went out and paid a load of money to Mr. Calvin Ridley. And they have Chigoziem Okonkwo at tight end. So trying to make it happen. Tony Pollard was added in the backfield as well. They're trying to make it happen. Give Will Levis a shot to compete here. And Joe Alt, it makes a ton of sense and should be a smash pick them. Moving on to pick 8, the new look Atlanta Falcons with a fully overhauled offense. Rome Odunze on the board. I know you guys are already getting excited. I would hate that from a fantasy perspective, to be fair. But they trade for Rondale Moore. They signed Darnell Mooney. They have Kyle Pitts. They have Drake London as their true wide receiver 1 first-round pick from 2 years ago. They obviously drafted Bijan in the first round last year. And Kirk Cousins paid him a bunch of money to come in. Very good offensive line. I just don't see pick 8 being offense here. I do not. And they don't need Odunze. What do they need? Let's talk about that. The Atlanta Falcons had the 6th worst pass rush in the NFL last year. Couldn't get to the quarterback. Couldn't apply any pressure. And they lost a lot of games in the fourth quarter. They need guys that can make plays, force turnovers, get them the ball back. And, with an offense that's likely going to score a lot of points, they don't want to have that Dallas Cowboys effect where they score really quickly because they're super good and then their defense is gassed and they lose shootouts every week, right? They need a pass rusher, a guy that can get to the ball. Not QB, excuse me. Edge rusher. And for those reasons, they are going to be taking Dallas Turner, edge rusher from Alabama. Phenomenal talent here. Arguably best pass rusher in this class. Some people like the Leatu Latu for different reasons. Obviously, he plays a little bit type of a different feel in the role, always playing off tackle. Dallas Turner is a phenomenal athlete. Jared Verse is bringing the most size, kind of that pure power rusher, and he's very effective as well. But what for what the Atlanta Falcons need, Dallas Turner is going to be a smash pick here, and he will be the first defensive player off the board. And the first 7 picks, all offense. Could be the same as last year. That happened in 2023 as well. All right, I did say that we were going to be talking about the Chicago Bears a little bit more. And we are here at pick number 9. Now, you're also saying, Rome Odunze's on the board. Why not give Caleb Williams another weapon? I hear you. It just doesn't make sense when you look at the scheme of things. It's a similar narrative when I was just talking about the Atlanta Falcons. Yes, bringing in another weapon, supporting your rookie quarterback. I absolutely agree. But here's the thing, guys. The Chicago Bears could go 8-9 this year, and we would perceive it as a huge victory for the team. Huge step in the right direction. Letting that quarterback develop, right? Letting Caleb Williams develop, and they can get more weapons, for the team going into next year. But they go out and trade a 4th-round pick for Keenan Allen. That says a lot to me. They have Keenan Allen. They have DJ Moore, very, very capable duo there. Arguably top 6 duo in the NFL now. Arguably. Excuse me. And Cole Kmet at tight end, very capable. They bring in DeAndre Swift, very good pass catcher. They got Roshan for a little bit of size at the goal line if they need it. Caleb is shifty, can run a little bit too when needed. I just don't see it being a skill player here. Now, offensive skill player. Could it be offensive line? It could. Okay. Now, they drafted Darnell Wright. He's playing left tackle, developing. Looks like he's going to be very, very good in the first round last year. Could they go right tackle here and shore up that offensive line even more, add even more depth, and just make sure Caleb is protected and they can develop him the way they want to? I think that's completely in play, And if you're looking at guys that can play right tackle, obviously Talisi Fuaga stands out. I think he's probably my number 2 after Joe Alt, just because of his ability you can move him around. He can play pretty much every position, but I think J.C. Latham and Amarius Mims are fantastic right tackle options. Tyler Guyton. But if they're here, I think we got to... Now, if we're looking at the offensive line, too, there's a couple things to take into account, actually. So the Bears acquired Ryan Bates via trade, a guard. So they add a guard there. They signed Jake Curhan and Matt Pryor to 1-year deals. Both play tackle. So added some depth there. And they also signed Coleman 1-year deal to play center. Yeah. So, which all being said is they've made adjustments on the offensive line. So all roads are leading towards, I don't think this is going to be offense at this pick. I think it's going to be defense. And here's the other reason why. And this is where I go back to saying it's similar to the Atlanta Falcons narrative. The Chicago Bears had the worst pass rush grade in the entire NFL last year. Okay, I think when I was talking about Atlanta, they were 5th or 6th worst. They are the worst in the NFL. They traded for Montez Sweat, 2nd-round pick during the year. He came in, made some immediate impact, helped. They were still worse. They were still the worst in the NFL. This team needs pass rush. So if we take a look at the available pass rushers, it's obviously going to be between Leatu Latu here and Jared Verse. And although Jared Verse is going to bring a power, some size and a power rush to that defensive line, I think skill players are also going to be needed here. And that's where I really like Leatu Latu going. You could see here, played outside the tackle majority of the time. He's pass rushing off the end. He's got fantastic grades. I like this a lot. And they brought in Montez Sweat. Leatu can kind of play opposite, bring in some speed with that power that Montez is bringing. Jared Verse would feel like a duplication that's not necessarily needed and adding some different dynamics to the defense. So at pick 9, it's the earliest I've had him go in a while, but they are going to secure Latu here. And we know that, we obviously know that the injury concerns are not there. Okay. Moving on to the Jets at pick 10. All right, so if we're looking at the Jets at pick 10 here, this is an interesting one. So obviously you guys see Odunze on the board at 10. Not supposed to be there. You see Brock Bowers on the board at 10. And he's been going there in a lot of mocks lately. And I know that all of you guys are saying those are two weapons the Jets just couldn't pass on. It's got to be Brock or Romo Dunze. For the most part, I agree. Just hear out the theory because I think it's important that you look at both sides. And that's the point of mock drafts anyway. So they have Garrett Wilson, and they don't really have a great two. They just signed Mike Williams. If you want to call him a great two, you can. I think he's a good two if he can stay healthy. And that's like the theme of the New York Jets. And it's good. I'm going to talk more. I'm going to say that 3 more times as I go through this, not even including just Aaron Rodgers. And Tyler Conklin at tight end, but Breece Hall running back. Their O-line was not great last year. So they did poor pass blocking with horrendous quarterback play. Thus, earlier I said they were in the list of one of the worst receiving teams in the NFL. Well, Aaron Rodgers also gets hurt week 1, like the first drive of the first game. So Jets season was over before it started. And I understand, but if you think about the team and the situation, here's what you got to take into account. The Jets have a window here, okay? Aaron Rodgers is aging. He's got maybe a year or 2 left. If you think he's got more than 2 years, I don't know. But his window is closing quickly. The Jets obviously are going to get it frustrated because they know they kind of put all their chips in and it's not working out, right? It got hurt, it is what it is. But they lose Mekhi Becton. They need a left tackle. They bring in Tyron Smith. I love the addition. Potentially year-changing free agent signing. Okay, and I'll address that in a second. They also go out and get Morgan Moses from Baltimore, play right tackle. And they also signed a John Simpson guard, 2-year deal, where Morgan and Tyron got 1-year deals. So they're trying to put a team together so they can compete in the window. Here's the problem. Morgan Moses, what is he, 31, 32? Tyron Smith, 32 now. Aging guys who've had good careers and have been very good, but have trouble staying on the field. They have trouble staying healthy. Are you going to place your bet that they all just stay healthy the whole year? Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses both in their age 31, 32 seasons can play 17 games and then a postseason on top of that if you're really trying to do it. So as much as they could benefit from some weapons here, the smart play, in my opinion, would be to continue to improve the offensive line because they also have picks 72 and 111. And then they have 134, 185, and they have a few late round picks. So they have a total of 7 picks. Not a ton, but they can address wide receiver or some of those other needs later. Now, it sucks because they don't have a second round pick, but they could try to get something at 72 and add to that offense a bit. And they have a pretty good defense, really young, and although that defense is, the wheels are going to fall off down the road here, guys, this is about the window. And so for that reason, we're going to take Talisi Fuaga here. He can play left tackle. He can play right. You can move him around. Extremely talented. And he can get mentorship from Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith. I think this is great for the future of the franchise. I think he's a great pick here. And he can be a guy that maybe just earns a spot, right? If Morgan and Tyron are playing, maybe you kick him into guard and he plays opposite of John Simpson. Or if one of them goes down, you kick him out to tackle. This makes a ton of sense to me. And if they are going to try to do what they want to do this year, they're going to need depth at the O-line in the dog days. And as much as there's a Brock Bowers and a Romo Dunze just sitting here, I think it's really just a measure of risk. Do you take the safer play, keep your quarterback, keep your O-line healthy and have some depth? Or do you go more high risk and draft another weapon here and try to win some shootouts and hope that Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy and hope that no one goes down on the O-line? Like, it just seems risky. Seems high risk. So for those reasons, we're taking Talisi Fuaga here to the New York Jets. All right, got a fun pick here. The Los Angeles Chargers are here at pick 11. They trade back with the Minnesota Vikings for the J.J. McCarthy deal, and they are on the clock at 11. And we are not going to think about it too much because he's not supposed to be here, and they would have loved a wide receiver at 5. And so if they can get Odunze at 11, I think they're going to smash this pick. Yes, I talked about right tackle and the culture change and what they're trying to do. They pick at 23. They can address some of that later, get a running back in the second, third round, and be in a good situation here. So we are going to lock in Mr. Odunze from Washington. Third receiver on the big board. Okay. So, Denver Broncos on the clock at 12. I think important things to remember, if you can see here, they pick at 12, and then they don't pick again until 76. They do not have a second-round pick. The New Orleans Saints have their second-round pick for this year. So, they have a lot of needs. You can draft a quarterback here. Excuse me. You can draft a quarterback here. Does not mean that this team is going to be where it needs to be. So, one thing I just want to mention, it's not happening today, but some of these teams at the middle to late first, would they be in a situation where they want to move up to 12 to take that player that they just know they want and need, and it'll make a huge impact for their team? Could someone try to come up and take a receiver here? Could someone try to come up and, take Brock Bowers here? I think the Denver Broncos would be looking to do that. Could they move from mid to late first and acquire a second, acquire some additional picks? It's a huge need for this team right now. Sean Payton's obviously got his work cut out for him. And the Russell Wilson is it's the gift that keeps on giving with that trade still to this day. So we are, however, going to go ahead and stick and pick, and they are going to get their quarterback of the future in Mr. Bo Nix. Solid talent out of Oregon. Bit older, but, don't love late age breakouts. You can cut him some slack. He was a COVID year guy. 2020 kind of messed up everything. But we're not sure. We'll see. He is mature. He comes with a lot of experience. The hope would be, obviously, that he's being picked because Sean Payton thinks he can run his system effectively. But there's question marks there, especially if you're taking a guy at 12. Interesting pick here. Okay, now remember, the New England Patriots move back. They acquire a first-round pick and a second-round pick from the Las Vegas Raiders, as well as a future first. Likely, there would be some pick swaps in real life, things like that. There could even be something in 2026. They move back, and the logic, again, was doesn't matter who you take with the third overall pick, your team's still going to suck. So move back, try to find a way to stack some assets, and how can we piece together a team that has a better chance of competing in a tough division so we aren't last again. And this is where they're going to take a quarterback, and I know it's early, but something like this could play out and make sense, especially if the Raiders have already gone up to get who they want. And they are going to take Michael Penix Jr. here. Quarterback out of Washington. And a couple things I think that are important to remember too for New England as I'm looking at my notes here. You might say, well, if Bo Nix is there at 13, why not just take him? Brock Bowers. Bo Nix. Lost my words there, guys. If Brock Bowers is available at 13, why would we not just take him? Right? He's an elite talent. You're right. That team needs weapons. Okay, well, obviously, Odunze's gone. I think that's a different scenario if he's available at 13, but he's gone. Yes, Brock Bowers is there, but they also just gave a 3-year, $27 million deal to Hunter Henry. They also just gave a 1-year deal to Austin Hooper. Like, they're not going tight end here on a team that needs wide receivers really bad. Like, they'll address wide receiver later, too, to my point. But they're going to go ahead and take Michael Penix here. and try to address the skill and pass rush options a bit later. All right, the New Orleans Saints are on the clock at pick 14, and they have a huge need to support that defensive line. If Odunze was on the board at 14, I think he's probably getting taken just so they can add another wide receiver opposite of Chris Olave. But with him gone, the pick should be Mr. Jazon, a.k.a. Johnny Newton. Arguably, him or Byron Murphy are the best defensive interior in this entire class, and they are going to go ahead and secure him here. And I believe that makes him only the third defensive player off the board, and they are all defensive line or pass rush. Indianapolis Colts here at 15. Now, I've had Brock Bowers going to them in a lot of mocks. However, I'm changing it up today. And the pick today is going to be Mr. Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. And the reason for that is, if you didn't know, the Colts ran zone defense 77% of the time last year. 2023, their defense was in zone 77% of the time. Largest in the entire NFL. Largest in the entire NFL by a pretty big margin. And the Colts not only need help at safety, they need help at corner as well. And when you know it, Cooper DeJean can play both. I think he fits extremely well in this Colts defense, in this team, in this philosophy. And he's also great in zone. So for those reasons, I changed it up. And the pick is Cooper DeJean here. Pick 16, Seattle Seahawks. Where will they go? Great question. This is a pick I have gone back and forth on for a lot of reasons. But with some new information I found, I actually am going to go offensive line with this pick, and I'll explain why. The pick is going to be Mr. Troy Fatanu. And if you look here, obviously in 2023, he spent almost all of his time at Washington playing left tackle. And this was a championship contending team, obviously losing in the national championship game to Michigan. But extremely good talent here. And Mr. Fatanu played left tackle, but if you look at the previous years, he also got a lot of snaps in at guard. He's a guy that's played inside a bit. He's a guy that can be moved around. And he's coming out of Washington. Now, that part's important because Ryan Grubb is the new offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. Ryan Grubb just came from that same team I was talking about, national championship team, loser, but they made it there, the Washington Huskies. Ryan Grubb just came from Washington. He has ties to Fatanu. They've played together, or worked together. He's coached him. He knows what he can do. And here's the bottom line. The Seattle Seahawks last year had the 5th worst pass blocking grade as a unit. They didn't protect well. And when you know it, they struggled to pass the ball, right? They did not score a lot of points last year. Geno Smith had a regression year as well. And Fatanu realistically can play all 5 positions. He's had experience at center as well. So he is going to be the pick here, and they're going to try to improve this offensive line. Jacksonville Jaguars on the clock at 17. And I do know exactly where I'm going to go with this pick. It is going to be defense, and they are going to select Mr. Quinyon Mitchell. Fantastic talent. Arguably one of the best true corners. Obviously, Cooper DeJean has a little bit more flexibility, can bounce around a little bit, but true corner, Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo. Fantastic year, and has been getting even more buzz and shooting up the boards even more. Post Senior Bowl, post NFL Combine, where he tested extremely well and was very, very fast. Not as long as we had hoped, but very, very, very good talent. And if we think about the Jacksonville Jaguars for just a second, we know that they released Darius Williams. They did add Ronald Darby, and losing Darius Williams, adding Ronald Darby, you're kind of losing an okay corner and getting an okay corner, if we're being honest, right? They have Tyson Campbell opposite, and he's pretty good, but this team needs more help in the secondary, and I think Quinion Mitchell's going to come in here, be a great value for them at pick 17, and improve a much-needed secondary, and I think they'll address wide receiver in some ways in the later rounds. They're also hoping Parker Washington can step up, rookie drafted out of last year. Showed some signs. Cincinnati Bengals on the clock at 18. And I know absolutely where I'm going with this. We're just going to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line for a second. Offensive and defensive line, actually. That's the number one thing they need to address to start. They gave up a ton of rushing yards. They couldn't stop the run. Their defensive line just was not it. Struggled in the pass rush as well, other than Trey Hendrickson. And it's just not enough. Like, the defensive line needs to be improved. The offensive line, however, also needs to be improved. And if you're talking about all the money you're paying Joe Burrow and the elite talent he is and the window for them to try to get back to the Super Bowl, like, they got to protect this guy. They got T. Higgins on the franchise tag. Hopefully nothing happens and he doesn't get traded and he's still there. You know, they want to have a Super Bowl window. Jamar Chase is going to need to get paid here soon. They did bring in Zach Moss at running back and Mike Gesicki at tight end. So, like, they've made some moves on offense. Brock Bowers would be in play here. I completely agree. But I think they're just going to be smart and address the major things that need to be addressed. Now, look, let's look at the offensive line for a second. Ted Kappa, their center. Orlando Brown Jr., he was a huge free agent signing for them last year from Kansas City at left tackle. And the bottom line, they had 3 guys on the offensive line who graded in the 70s, which is really great in terms of overall offensive blocking. This past year in 2023, they were all in the 60s. Like, they all had a regression year. Orlando Brown Jr. didn't play as well. Kappa didn't play as well. Alex didn't play as well. They're going to need them to step up this year. Obviously, injuries and staying healthy is a part of that, but they're going to need them to step back up because they were a much better offensive line in 2022. And we're going to need to bring in a right tackle here. It's a huge need for them. Jonah Williams is obviously on his way out. They're going to need a new right tackle. And if we're looking at the true right tackles on the board, because Olu Fashanu is a left tackle. He's a true left tackle, played some guard, but the right side is going to be more foreign to him. And I don't see that being the pick when you've got 3 guys right here that have been true right tackles. Yeah, Graham Barnes also a left tackle. So in J.C. Latham, Amarius Mims, and Tyler Guyton. I think there's a lot going for Tyler Guyton. Amarius Mims is kind of like Broderick Jones 2.0, except he's playing right tackle instead of left, even though the Steelers moved him to right tackle, which we'll actually talk about in a minute. But the pick here is going to be J.C. Latham, right tackle out of Alabama, and will be a huge improvement to this offensive line and hopefully keep Joe Burrow healthy. When Joe Burrow was healthy last year, the team won games. But all those weeks he played injured and couldn't get protected, they were losers. Pick 19, the Los Angeles Rams. I've gone a lot of different directions with this pick, but bottom line is they just lost arguably one of the best defensive players to ever play the game in Aaron Donald. And if obviously Johnny Newton's already off the board, but if Byron Murphy is here at 19, I don't see them not taking him. I don't see a way around it. You could go pass rush with like a Jared Verse if you like, but it's just going to be Byron Murphy here. I'm not going to think about it too much. It's a huge need. Just lost Aaron Donald. Unless they want everyone to run for him for 200 a game, they're going to need to replace that. All right, I just talked about it. Kind of gave away the pick in hindsight. Hindsight's 2020, and they are the 20th pick. Hey. But we are going to go offensive line here. Okay? If somehow one of the big 3 wide receivers fell, that'll never happen, then that would probably be a smash pick here for a wide receiver needy team. But They are going to go Amarius Mims here. Plays right tackle. Okay? And hear me out. They are trying to build chemistry. They are trying to get this offensive line to work. Guys, it's been 5-6 years now of them just not being able to figure it out. Okay? They drafted Broderick Jones last year, also out of Georgia. True left tackle. They've been having him playing right tackle. They also drafted Darnell Washington out of Georgia. Purely a run-blocking tight end. Guy's a monster. They just aren't quite figuring it out. Okay? They're bringing in Russ. They obviously brought in Justin Fields. They have George Pickens. Like, they're trying to get this offense to be able to move and run the ball and get Najee and Jaylen Warren a million touches. So they're going to bring in Amarius Mims. They're going to put him at right tackle. And they're going to move Broderick Jones over to left, where his true skill set lies. And they're going to at least try to protect Russ and Justin Fields and make this offense do something. Miami Dolphins on the clock here at pick 21. Now, I am going to change it up here. I had a player in mind. They lost Christian Wilkinson on the defensive line, and they need to replace him bad. But if there's no Byron Murphy and there's no Johnny Newton here, it feels like a pretty big reach to go and get like a Braden Fisk. I think he's a guy that has sneaky late first round upside. Like he could sneak in. Obviously very talented, but yes, they just gave Jonnu Smith a deal. Wasn't a ton of money. For how well the Miami Dolphins score in terms of offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, they were a top 10 secondary, a top 10 pass rush, a top 10 overall defense, a top 10 offense, a top 5 offense in points scored, like receiving yards, passing yards, like they ran the ball. Like this team didn't, on paper, there's like not a lot of gaps. There really isn't. It's surprising that they just weren't winning more games. The data like lies to us with Miami. It's weird. But I just love the thought. You know, Mike McDaniel gets another weapon. Achane, Raheem Mostert they brought back. They got Tyreek here. They got Jalen Waddle there. Field stretching options. Like, I think Brock Bowers just makes this like arguably the highest scoring offense in the NFL again. And I think it'd be fun to watch. May not happen, but we're going to do it. I think it has some big fantasy implications. You know, I think it affects everyone, you know, because it's like a Green Bay Packers scenario. Like, who's going to be the guy this week? You know, obviously Tyreek's pretty bust proof, but Jalen Waddle had some down weeks, high variance weeks. Raheem Mostert, obviously, and Devon Achane, who knows what happened there. But we are going to go Brock Bowers here to the Miami Dolphins. And that will be one exciting offense to watch if Tua and everybody can stay healthy. Philadelphia Eagles picking at 22. Now, I've been going corner here a lot. I'm doing it again today. And I've had Eagles fans writing in the comments, you know, oh, well, that's going to be like our 5th corner now. You know, we've made additions and Gardner Johnson and this and that. I understand. But your guys' secondary was horrible last year. Injury-ridden, inefficient, people making mistakes, like culture change. Like, it just, anything that I felt like could have went wrong with the secondary last year did. And here's the bottom line. If we're being honest with ourselves, James Bradbury and Darius Slay are aging. They are getting older. Yes, they're on contracts, but bring some more youth in here. And if you're here at 22 and you have a guy like Terrion Arnold still on the board, can you pass? I don't believe you can. And Eagles keep going defense in the first round, so I'm sticking to it. We're going to take Terrion Arnold here. I do think Jared Verse could be in play with like the Hassan Reddick leaving narrative, but you know, they had Nolan Smith last year. Like, they just have a young, really good team and a really good defense. So I like them going secondary there, and that is the pick. Jared Verse looking very nice on that board, but obviously they brought back both Bosa and Khalil Mack, so that's not going to be a pick here for the Chargers. And they moved back, and we were talking about offense, changing that culture, being able to run the ball. They have Rashawn Slater at left tackle. This is where they're going to bring in a right tackle as well. And Olu Fashanu, Graham Barton, both being true left tackles, maybe a little bit of guard. This is where I actually think they're going to go potentially like a Jordan Morgan, Tyler Guyton. I think Kingsley Suamatia is in play as well. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. You know, you could see here he's played both right tackle and left tackle in the last 2 years. Gotten a ton of work in at both. Jordan Morgan, actually a truer left tackle, excuse me. But, I don't know what happened here. There we go. That was weird. Just clicked all the positions somehow. Right tackle. This team wants to run the ball. Greg Roman wants to run it 25 plus times a game probably. And whatever rookie running back they take in the second or third round, draft them in fantasy, guys. But we're going to go ahead and go Tyler Guyton here. Of everyone on the board, has the most, as you can see, experience playing right tackle. 661 snaps just this last year at right tackle for OU, for the Sooners, and did very well. Has a few things that need to be refined and polished up. But with great coaching, Greg Roman, Jim Harbaugh, I don't see it as a big concern, and they're going to go line here. Dallas Cowboys on the clock at pick 24. This is a pretty easy pick here, in my opinion. We know that the Dallas Cowboys have done nothing this offseason. They are, from a fantasy perspective, whatever running back goes there, I would be very excited at drafting, as well as the Chargers. So, you know, Jonathan Brooks, a Trey Benson, go to those teams. Blake Corum, those are some guys that you're really going to want to be looking at in fantasy. But as I said earlier, with the Jets pick, they lost Tyron Smith. Goes to the New York Jets, play left tackle. Yes, he's older. Yes, he's aging. But they have to replace that need, right? They're going to pay Dak Prescott potentially a ton of money. They want I think this team regresses this year. I honestly do. But if you want this team to continue to be able to try and compete, they need a new left tackle. And this is where Olu Fashanu stops his slide and gets drafted here to the Dallas Cowboys. Arguably one of the best pure, true left tackles in the class outside of Joe All. But I think this is going to be a great pick for the Dallas Cowboys. Green Bay is on the clock here at 25. And this is actually a new take for me. I haven't been going here in most of my drafts. I've been going defense, corner, things like that. And although I think those are still huge needs, like I think a Nate Wiggins could be in play here, things like that. I think a Tyler Nubin at safety could potentially be in play here. If we're quickly actually looking at what picks they have. Okay, so they have 25. They have 41 from the Jets. 58. 88, 91 from Buffalo. Yeah, they have 11 picks this year as well. So Green Bay doing Green Bay things. I think they're going to be very, very good this year, guys. However, interesting stat here for you guys. Green Bay Packers last year, highest percentage of their sacks were given up from the interior offensive line. Very few actually came from the left side or right side in terms of left tackle, right tackle. You know, that could be great work from the bumps and tight ends. Obviously, we know they added Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft. You know, that's where the running back play comes into a bit too. A.J. Dillon, obviously, being a good pass blocking running back. But it's that chip, right? It's those chips, right? Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, like they weren't getting a lot of outside pressure in. Most of their sacks that Jordan Love took came from the inner offensive line. They also lost John Runyon this offseason. He leaves in free agency, and so they have a need here. And I think if they're on the clock at 25, I think it's a smart, safe pick of a definite need for the team. JPJ is here at 25. Jackson Powers Johnson, excellent center out of Oregon, but he's also got experience playing guard, and you could see that here. He was a true center this past year. Oh my gosh, 829 snaps in 2023 for the Ducks. Played some right guard and bounced around to both left, right, and center. In his career at Oregon, the guy has experience. You can move him to left, right, center. He can be refined, and I think he will add some incredible depth to this team, and a team that is very, very good already. JPJ to the Green Bay Packers at 25. All right, moving on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, picking at 26 here. And there we go. Keep getting it out of frame. Sorry, guys. Arguably a lot of needs. I think someone like a Jared Verse is very much in play here. I think a Nate Wiggins could be in play. I don't particularly see them needing to go offensive line right here. I think this is where I'll come back to. If you can get Jared Verse at 26, he's a crazy good value. He shouldn't be on the board anymore, I know. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we also lost Shaq Barrett in free agency this year. One of their better pass rushers. And they're going to need to replace that. They're going to need pass rush help. And I think this is where we just have to plug in Jared Verse, and I think they would be very excited to still be able to get him here at 26. Okay. Arizona Cardinals are now on the clock at 27. Okay, so we know that they took Marvin Harrison Jr. with their 4th overall pick. They're on the clock now at 27. They have 35, 66, 71, 90. I mean, they have an additional 6. They have an additional 10 picks, right? I talked about that earlier. They have 11 total. So they have an additional 10 more picks. Okay? I think offensive line can be continued to improve. I think someone like a Kingsley Suamatia, Grant Barton, I think some of these guys are definitely in play. I don't know why it keeps doing that. But this is where they're actually going to improve on defense. And specifically, they need to improve their secondary. This is interesting, and if you didn't know, the Arizona Cardinals had the worst rated secondary in the NFL last year. As a unit. Their corners, their secondary, right? If you look at it as a whole, they had the worst rated one in the entire NFL. Getting smoked all day long. Defense corner was terrible. So this is where they're going to bring in their newest corner 1 and add a very capable Nate Wiggins to their secondary and use their second first round pick this year on a corner in Nate Wiggins. Had a very good combine and pro day. Tested well, very long as well, and I think he'll be very, very successful coming out of Clemson. Buffalo Bills are on the clock at 28, and I think this is quite obvious now. It's been trending here on mocks a ton already, but now Stephon Diggs gets traded to the Houston Texans. Obviously, for what the trade went down for, it just got to a point where it was like, what's best for the future of this team is that this guy's not on it. Behavioral beef with Josh Allen, him not being able to, Stephon Diggs not being able to control his emotions, this crap he's tweeting all the time, posting on his Instagram. It's just stuff the locker room, I think, didn't need anymore. And they get $20 million off their books, $19 million, something like that for the 2024 season. Houston's going for it. It's really terrible to see the in-division trade for them. But it happened. And it was for a 2025 second, by the way. If you guys didn't catch that. Not a 2024, a 2025 second. So it's not even benefiting them in this year's draft. So who do they have at wide receiver? Khalil Shakur. Okay. Hasn't done much in his first 2 years. They just traded for Curtis Samuel, who will be a gadgety slot guy that they can use. And I actually like that signing. Gabe Davis leaves in free agency to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Stephon Diggs just gets dealt. They have Justin Shorter on the team. and they just signed Mac Hollins. Not a great wide receiver core. I feel like we're starting to talk about the New York Giants here a little bit. They're going to draft a wide receiver, guys. They are absolutely drafting a wide receiver. They do have 10 picks this year as well. I like that. They have some things they need to shore up on defense. But the problem is they pick at 28 and 60. And they looks like they don't have a third round pick. So then after that, a lot of late round picks. So they're certainly going to have to go wide receiver here. And this is where they're going to take the second LSU wide receiver of the first round in Brian Thomas Jr. I don't love that he was a late age breakout, but 17 touchdowns led the NCAA last year, so had good quarterback play. The only thing that concerns me is this: Jayden Daniels, very capable quarterback. Brian Thomas Jr. played opposite of Malik Neighbors. Okay, Malik Neighbors required a lot of attention. Brian Thomas Jr. going to the Buffalo Bills, like, with no digs there, and he being then the focus, like, is he going to do well? Is he going to perform at the next level? And from a fantasy perspective, I'm not sure. You can't just say, oh, it's Josh Allen's new wide receiver 1. Like, we don't know. This could be a bust pick. I hope not, but it's possible. He ended up running sub 4.4 at the combine. So there is a lot of upside here. I don't want to just be negative on Brian Thomas Jr. He could be very, very successful, but just things to consider. LSU as well, right? If you go back a couple years, there was another great quarterback that, won him a national championship in the name of Joe Burrow. Jamar Chase is wide receiver. Opposite of him, Terrace Marshall Jr. Phenomenal season that year. Gets drafted to the Carolina Panthers. Career's over. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills are a very well-ran organization, and Josh Allen's a different scenario, but just something to keep in mind there. Detroit Lions on the clock at 29. A couple things I think are important here is, obviously, they lost Gardner Johnson in free agency this year. You guys saw that. He went back to Philadelphia. Now, they do add Carlton Davis. They do add Amik Robertson at corner. And they're okay. There's some depth. They're not great. And this team needed better corner play last year. And with Kool-Aid McKinstry on the board here, I think it's a great value for Detroit at pick 29. Detroit only having 7 picks this year. Looks like they don't have a 4th rounder. Yeah. And then they have Minnesota's 3rd. So they're going to go ahead and take Kool-Aid here and try to run it back. Improve that secondary. At one time, considered to be the best corner in the class. Obviously regressed a little bit last year. So some people are going above him. Nate Wiggins, Terran Arnold, Cooper DeJean. But still very, very capable. And I think Detroit would be happy to get him here. 29. All right, pick 30. The Baltimore Ravens. And I talked about it earlier with the New York Jets again, and they keep coming up from pick 10. But Morgan Moses, their right tackle, long-time right tackle. He was old. He was getting older, had trouble staying healthy, but very capable. He leaves in free agency to go to the Jets. And so they have a need at right tackle. And although Graham Barton is historically a left tackle, I think he can be moved over. Could a Jordan Morgan be in play? Maybe, But they got to shore up this offensive line. So I'm certain that this is going to be the pick here. And just because I like the experience and the flexibility that Graham Barton brings from Duke, we're going to go ahead and solidify him as the pick. He's very capable. 6'5", 314. I believe he actually came in heavier at the combine, something like in the 320s. So that's going to be the pick here, and they're going to go ahead and try to get that Morgan Moses replacement. All right, final 2 picks. San Francisco 49ers on the clock at 31. And this is actually where I'm going to go a different direction today, and I'll explain why. I'm going to talk about Kingsley Suma-Atia. I apologize. I know I'm butchering that. I'll try to get the names list so I can work on my pronunciation here before we get closer to the draft. But he has experience playing both right tackle and left tackle. And believe it or not, as well as the San Francisco 49ers played and as good as they were and as many points as they scored, they were actually 24th in the NFL in pass protection. They struggled a bit. Purdy, it wasn't quite what we saw in 2022. They weren't able to protect as well. Injury, this, that. Mike McGlinchey left. He was their right tackle from 2 years ago. He's playing well in Denver. And obviously they still have Trent Williams at left tackle, but I like Kingsley here. I think he can come in to a veteran, mature team, get great development, learn. What's better to learn from a guy like Trent Williams? And, if we're looking purely at the board here, obviously safety's not really going to be a need. You could try to say we need to replace Eric Armstead. Like, do you like a Braden Fisk here? Some of them it doesn't feel like a fit for a first round pick. And so, this team wants to keep scoring points and steamrolling everybody, and you need to have a good offensive line to do that. So add more depth. And we're going to go ahead and take Kingsley here out of BYU. First time I've had him in the first in a mock, but definitely within the realm of possibilities. And that brings us to an exciting pick here at 32. So I'm going to just tell you right away, I am going to go wide receiver here. They bring in Hollywood Brown. I think that's a nice addition. Obviously, Rashee Rice is going into his second year, and he's been looking really good. Travis Kelce aging. But a team that kind of like plays zone offense in a way, if you will, and is good against zone defense. Also, Rashee Rice, if you missed it, it seems like he might be getting into a little bit of trouble. Gets pulled over, the weed in the car. He was in Texas. He fled the scene. I mean, I don't know. We'll see what happens from a real legal perspective, what trouble he gets into or who gets paid off. And then the NFL will make its decision. So could he be suspended a couple games? We'll see. And even with them, though, the team needs a lot of help on offense. We saw what happened last year. So for those reasons, we're going to draft Ladd McConkey here. For this also main reason. Great route runner, faster than people think. But the number one thing that makes Ladd McConkey stand out is he is phenomenal against zone. Andy Reid loves that. Very Travis Kelce-esque, very good against zone. And he's going to be our final pick of the first round here. And we are going to take Ladd McConkey to the Kansas City Chiefs. All right. There it is. There is the recap of today's Mock Draft Monday. I hope you guys enjoyed. I really appreciate it if you're stuck around to watch it all the way till the end. Guys, best way to support me is to obviously like the video, but more importantly, subscribe to the channel. Don't miss any of the content I have coming out or the future mock drafts. And lastly, I would love to get more dialogues going in the comments. So if there was any takes you loved today, any takes you hated today, please write them down there. Would love to get you guys' opinions and keep the dialogues going. But until next time, guys, thank you for returning back to 4th and Inches. And stay tuned for the next one. Take care.